Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At 7 p.m., we'll call to order this meeting of the Town Council. I'll ask for a roll call vote. I'll ask for a roll call of attendance. Councilor Anderson.
We couldn't hear you, Larry.
Present.
Councilor
So
Golembeski.
I'm here.
Here.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, but it's broken up.
Councilor Anderson and Golembeski report as being present.
Okay,
Councilor Mataronis.
Here.
Councilor Moore.
Here.
Councilor Mushin is here. All 5 members of the council are here. A quorum is present. First item of business is approval of the minutes of August 20th.
Motion to approve the minutes of the August 20th, 2020 Town Council meeting unless anybody has any comments or questions.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski. Any discussion? Call for a roll call vote. Councilor Anderson.
Aye.
Councilor Golembeski.
Aye.
Councilor Mataronis.
Aye.
Councilor Moore.
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you. The next item of business is approval of the minutes of August 25th.
Motion to approve the August 25th, 2020 meeting of the Town Council unless anybody has any questions or comments on that minutes.
I'll second that one as well.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski. Any discussion on the motion? A vote then on the motion. Councilor Anderson.
If you can hear me, if you can hear me and I'm not, can you hear me?
Yes, it's still broken up, but we can hear you.
We hear your,
So my question was simply paper. Yeah, with regards to this passage, contents of the executive session were sealed by vote of the council in open session listed above. Will we have the contents of those minutes, or are there any other minutes that are sealed? I guess I'm still confused about that.
Okay. The sealed minutes were sent to you separately that you voted to seal, and I did not hear back from any of the councilors that you had any problems with the wording of those sealed minutes.
so the motion that has been made.
Okay, I'll search for those. I must have them. Thank you. Thank you.
The motion on which we are voting is the approval of the minutes, both unsealed and sealed, of that evening. That then is, let's renew the roll call vote. Councilor Anderson, how do you vote?
Larry, is it possible for you?
Aye.
Oh, okay. In the future, if you're having difficulty, could you either raise your hand or type in the chat box and I can report your response?
Okay, I will do that. At the same time, I might try to log in from my phone here and see if that improves things. In the meantime, while I'm here, I'll be trying to do that and see if that improves this connection.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll wave my hand in the future. In any case, thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Anderson then votes aye. Councilor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you. By way of announcements, too late to be included in this agenda, we have received a resignation from Mary Rogers, who is chair of the Harbor Commission. The clerk will make that vacancy announced, and we will include that in our next council meeting for any comment that anyone may have.
Bob,
Yes.
I just have to say, she was on the Harbor Commission with me back in probably 1996 when I was the chairman of the Harbor Commission. So she's been there probably 22, 24 years. So I'd like to try to give her a little bit more than letter of thank you, maybe some flowers or a gift certificate to somewhere if possible.
Let me say that, without any degree of decrement from what you just said, the matter is not before us, and therefore we will address that. And I hear your sentiments, and we'll make that happen at our next meeting.
Very good, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any other announcements? Hearing none, I propose and would entertain a motion to place on file the 8 department head reports. At the conclusion of the motion in the discussion period, were a counselor interested in having a department head report on that, I would suggest we do that. And we'll then proceed with the vote at the conclusion of any discussion that might ensue. I would then entertain a motion to place the 8 department head reports on file.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Golembeski, second by Mataronis. Now discussion. Are there any items that someone would like to have clarification on?
I'd like to hear from the town administrator. There's some issues on there that I would like to have him speak on. He can just give a summation, go down to it like he generally does. I think it's important for him and the rest of the residents of the town just to know what he's been working on.
Very good.
Thank you.
Town administrator,
Would you like me to do that right now,
please,
Mr. President?
please.
Okay. I'm trying to get, okay. Very quickly, I'll cover those. Thank you for the opportunity. The town road study from Beta Engineering, it's currently in process, and we should get a report very soon. Rhode Island Road, we received information from Mr. David Haffenreffer about the shutoffs. That information has been sent to attorney William Landry for him to share that with all the residents in the area because they have to follow a certain process in order to get those shutoffs taken care of. Swamp Road, Long Pasture Road drainage, it will be starting anytime now. Actually, the contractor has purchased the materials and should start the work very soon in that area, and that's a drainage project there. The finance director, Mr. Joseph DeSantis, started with us Monday, August 31st, and I will quote his words. He says, "I enjoy what I'm doing and looking to take on the challenge." So obviously that's good stuff. Delinquent taxes, we have informed 18 of the folks who were behind, of the residents, I should say, they were behind in their taxes. Thus far, we have collected $55,000 of the outstanding money. I have 50 there, but the report from the treasurer speaks correctly, and she has now asked for 50,000. The town landing restoration, we have the RFP is out right now, and there'll be a meeting on the 14th with any interested contractors to learn more about the project and answer any questions that they may have. Town Way, at the request of the town council, Chief Rains, Chief Patron, and I visit the area. We had the opportunity to speak with 2 of the residents in the area. And after speaking with them, it appears that the issues that appear to be an issues certainly are not as I'm not going to say serious, but it's not that it requires any particular attention or any further attention. It's just continue to monitor the area for parking. And Chief Rains has assured me they will monitor the area a little closer going forward. He also provided an additional report, and I apologize. It was a much more comprehensive report. I have forwarded that to you, but in a nutshell, it pretty much is a summary of what I just presented. Secana Point parking lot in sanitation, Councilman Mararonis has been very instrumental in helping move things along. And DPW is doing quite a bit of work there. They're going to repairing the poles, there's barriers, and working on the cleaning the trash as well. Also the shed that was there has been removed. It's no longer there. So it has cleared the area. Some additional parking now is being provided there as well. The EM provided a third porta john, and we have a total of 3 porta johns in the area at the present time. Then the last item that I have there is the land swap by the transfer station, and we're still in negotiations and having further discussions, and very soon I should have a proposal to put before the town council. So those are the items. As you can see, it has been a pretty busy schedule, but we've certainly have moved quite a few items.
Tony, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I always like to hear your report, and I think it's important for the residents of the town to know exactly what we're doing and some of their issues are being resolved. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there further discussions on the matter? Are you ready to vote on the placing on file? I'll call then for a roll call vote to place these reports on file. First, Councillor Anderson.
I'm going to vote aye. You can't hear me on my phone, I guess.
Well, I can hear you now, I believe, on the phone because you're still muted on the computer.
Okay, so I'm speaking by my phone, so I'm going to try that. I'm going to keep my video on and try to speak on my phone. So
Okay.
I'm going to vote aye. But actually, having done that, could I, I'm confusing things altogether. Could I make one comment about Town Clerk Wardell's report?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, and I want to note that in her report, she reports back indexing of our land evidence books is at a stage where all images held by the town digitally for our books are uploaded to the online system. And she goes on, this is a big deal as far as I'm concerned, and it makes life a lot easier for a lot of people, title searchers, people interested in history, genealogy, or just town officials. So I want to thank the town clerk and her office for that big job. It's an important means of public access to the town information.
Thank you for singling that out. Are there any other comments that councilors wish to make? All right, then Councillor Anderson, how do you vote on filing of these minutes, placing on file these reports?
I vote aye.
Councillor Golembeski,
Aye.
Councillor Mataronis,
Aye.
Councillor Moore,
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you, and thanks for the careful work and the review that has occurred on all of it. The next item of business is old business, item 1, which is discussion and consideration of a proposed home produce stand zoning ordinance amendment submitted by Council Member Anderson. I'd like to give Councillor Anderson the opportunity to speak first. Let me make it clear that in accordance with Town Code Chapter 20, we have properly informed farmers since they are affected by this kind of ordinance. We have informed them of this and they've had the opportunity to comment. Some of them have submitted written comments and some are with us. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. So I want to thank, first of all, again, the town clerk for sending out the notice to the farmers as by ordinance and by law. And right off the bat, I want to make clear that for the purposes of what I've proposed, I'm not really asking the council to take any action here tonight. That is, I'm not seeking any formal endorsement of this by the council. I'm not invoking the provision of the town ordinance that is offering this as a formal proposal for a zoning amendment. I appreciate some of the responses that have been received both to the council, and I received some other emails, and comments about this proposal. So I do want to take the chance, just so people know what this is about, because I really didn't get to explain it at the last meeting. I'll speak briefly about why I proposed it, and then I'm glad to hear any other discussions. But I am not going to myself make a motion to ask the council to endorse this formally. If anything, I had thought of even making it just an informal proposal to send it to the planning board by the council, but I can do that myself without asking the council to do it. I'm really doing this primarily for informational reasons. But if I may, I would like to just read not the memo, but the actual ordinance language, which is not very long. I'll briefly say why I'm offering it at this time, and then the other correspondence we have or other questions or comments we can take up then. But what I proposed was something called a home.
Larry, your phone is muted.
Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, okay, thank you. So I'm just going to read the ordinance proposal, which I proposed in two formats. I'll read it in the most simple format, a definition that would appear under accessory use as miscellaneous, a definition of something called a home produce stand, and that would be defined as a home produce stand consisting of a removable or portable structure not to exceed 150 square feet in floor area, no more than 8 feet in height, from which garden produce, fruit, flowers, eggs, honey, dairy products, or other agricultural products grown or produced on premises or by another agricultural operation located in Little Compton may be sold. A home produce stand is permitted as an accessory use to a single-family resident in the Residence R and Business B district, and is exempt from the minimum front yard depth requirement set forth in section 14-4.1, provided that no such home produce stand or customer vehicle shall obstruct or impede traffic on an adjacent street. So that's the proposal. And frankly, as the background of this, as we know, is that now, going back a year and a half ago, the planning board, at our request, brought to the council a so-called farm accessory use ordinance, which was a fairly comprehensive proposal to define agricultural uses, accessory uses that are not defined in our ordinance in detail at present. We have a single ordinance provision in table A1 that provides a fairly broad compass for agricultural operations. I'm mindful that the last 6 months have been difficult for the planning board and others to work on this. Progress had been made on developing an alternative to the proposal that was offered last year. However, and I may be, partly motivated by the termination of my duty on the council, I did want to offer an example of ordinance language that is, it's sort of a target. I put it up as sort of a target for discussion, but I do, without going into the whole big story, I do feel from our experiences in recent years on some of these issues that the town, for all interest, the farmers especially, other property owners, and from my seat now as a town council member, town officials, I think would benefit from some more discriminating, I've used that in a just a defining term, discriminating definitions of different kinds of agricultural uses. My proposal, what I didn't mention is that, well, what I did mention is that what I'm proposing is to codify that home produce stands are permitted use with what I have proposed as minimal restrictions, but people can debate whether those are necessary at all. And I think this is necessary for the town to do, is that our A1 standards, which was adopted in the early 90s, does not take into account the developments in the Right to Farm Act. And other towns that have addressed this have had to face this by including in their ordinance some of the specific provisions of the Right to Farm Act that say what farmers can do. And I think so my plan, because I'm not going to ask the council to do anything unless the council chooses to, is just to send this proposal along to the planning board on my own, simply for informational purposes, to be added to what I hope will be a sort of return to their ongoing discussions about the farm accessory use ordinance. I will say that although we informed the farmers here, and that this is a totally related to some of those other uses, that a concern I have is that by our zoning, any property owner is a potential farmer. And there is a distinction in my mind between a home produce stand, a small scale stand, and other kinds of farm retail operation. We don't make those distinctions in our ordinance. In my estimation, or my observation, the practices that we enjoy, I patronize these stands like everyone else does. I'm glad to hear, I want to encourage them. But in practice, some of the operations provide a challenge for our zoning or our building official with regard to their consistency with other ordinance provisions. So that's my story, and I'm glad to hear other comments. I do note that some of the other, Mr. Morley sent a letter which he wanted included in the record. Mr. Cabot and Mr. Yates, I believe. If those need to be read into the record for the purpose of this meeting, I'm willing to do it. But that's my story. Again, I'm not asking the council at this time for any formal action on this. Thank you.
Thanks very much. That clarifies your intention with respect to this item. Mr. Cabot is with us. He has not asked that his comments be read into the record. I would like to give him an opportunity to comment if he has such a.
Based on Councilor Anderson's comments that he does not desire any action by the council, I really don't have anything to add other than the fact that I don't see a need for any regulation further than what we already have in our town code. And I would not support this sort of amendment if it ever does make it to the council.
Thank you. Mr. Morley indicated he would likely not be able to join us due to family matters. Is Mr. Morley present?
I do not think so.
I see Laura on there.
Yes, let me allow her to speak.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm heartened that Councilor Anderson isn't proposing this to be a formal zoning ordinance amendment, but I feel strongly enough on the matter. I should probably just read out what I had submitted potentially too late to the town council, because I think it matters. All right, to the Little Compton Town Council, I urge you to reject Councilor Anderson's proposed new restrictions on farm stands in town. While this is being proposed as a mere clarification of the zoning ordinance, Councilor Anderson is well aware that his proposal will shut down a good number of our beloved farm stands in Little Compton. Some of the farm stands that would be shuttered include a few that are run by elderly residents of modest means who rely on the sale of fresh produce to make ends meet. The town of Little Compton is the special place it is because of its agricultural past and present. The existing town code has allowed and supported the sale of farm produce for a very long time. The number and diversity of farm stands in town reflects the public's overwhelming support of farm stands, the creativity of our residents, and the broad permissions such farm stands have in the zoning ordinance. I realize that lingering acrimony over the now settled vineyard ordeal has led some to believe that everything related to farming must be tightly restricted in order to prevent another vineyard. In this case, I do not think the heights of umbrellas and square footage of picnic tables full of squash and tomatoes pose any such risk to the town. On the contrary, as a town, we will be worse off if we do away with the ability for my neighbor to sell his precious heirloom garlic out of a basket on his stone wall for a few weeks a year, just because he lacks a paved parking lot in his yard. Even more so, any potential benefits from these new restrictions do not outweigh the direct harm this ordinance will inflict on some of our town's most vulnerable residents. A group of farmers have been working diligently with the planning board for more than a year to address a number of issues related to what farming in Little Compton looks like today. Farm stands have been thoroughly discussed with overwhelming support for creating no new restrictions that would close farm stands down. A good part of the rural character of Little Compton is derived from the ability to drive around town, buying your next 3 meals from your neighbors from roadside stands. Let's not throw away this invaluable feature of our town just to satisfy an urge to say never again. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bob, can I speak? I just like to,
There was
Say that-
one, if I could, there was one other person who
oh, I'm sorry.
provided an input that I'd just like to acknowledge, but yes, I would like to move to council. Is there another member of the public who had provided an input to us that, for our consideration?
I do not see any further raised hands.
Councilor Mataronis, please proceed.
I think Andrew Morley's letter was well-written, and I concur with him 100%. I think in this situation, less is more. I don't think we need any more ordinances that become stricter as they age. So I would agree with Andrew Morley. That's just my stand on the matter.
Okay, thank you. Any further comment by the council?
May I just offer one comment in response to Mr. Morley's letter? This is Councilor Anderson. Andrew Morley and I have had some previous communications on this. He has strong and opinions. I do have to come to my own defense here on the question of that I'm proposing to shut down a good number of stands, and that I'm trying to hurt elderly residents of modest means. I have to say, as a person, I think on most counts by chronology and biology and legality fall into the elder group, that and know a lot of elders of all types, that it's certainly not my intent and I don't think the proposal is intended to or would it's not aimed at the elderly. I have to respond to that. But otherwise, I appreciate Mr. Morley's comments that are strongly and strongly stated, and I know he's put a lot of work into this as well.
Thank you. Is there then a motion to place this matter on file?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second it.
The motion is made by Councilor Golembeski, seconded by Councilor Anderson to place the matter on file. Is there further discussion? A roll call vote then. Councilor Anderson,
Aye.
Councilor Golembeski,
Aye.
Mataronis,
Aye.
Councilor Moore.
Andrew, you're on mute.
Muted, Andrew.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mushin, aye. Thank you very much. The next matter before us is a report from the administrator and police chief regarding review of parking matters at the end of Town Way due to concerns raised by Mr. and Mrs. Renaud. Town administrator.
Mr. President, I'm going to ask the police chief Raines comment on this since he prepared a nice thorough report. And I know he's on and he's willing to comment.
Thank you. Yes, go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Administrator. Thank you, sir. I'm not going to read the report verbatim, but I will summarize as best I can. So at the request of the town council, after a an issue was raised by the Renowns at 35 Town Way, made an assessment of Town Way and the parking and accessibility to the waterfront in that area. In the general area of Town Way and Oliver Lane, there are 7 no parking signs which limit the parking of vehicles in that specific area. You could park roughly 7 to 10 vehicles in the area, given the size of the individual vehicles. Parking is permissible from Oliver Lane westward on both sides of Town Way to the waterway, with the exception of a 1 car length spot that is directly in front of the walkway for number 35 Town Way, the Renon residence. That also has a rectangular yellow pavement marking there to assist in letting people know you can't park there. That's pretty faded, so I've asked Bill Moore to repaint that. I do not know the status of that right now. There's also a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit sign that faces west, and it's on the southern side of the roadway. None of the signs are blocked by any foliage, trees, branches, etc. So for that area, I think it's pretty well signed. The town maintenance department also has a trash and recycling receptacle in the area, which they empty on a regular basis. So after the assessment, I checked the records management system for the police department, and I dated it from May 1 of 2020 to August 28th of 2020, which was the date I authored the memo. We had 1 motor vehicle accident, which was the result of an unattended vehicle parked, which was struck in a side-by-side fashion by another vehicle traveling on the roadway. Minor damage to both vehicles and no injuries reported. There were 5 parking complaints from various residents in the area. There were 3 parking violations issued by officers as a result of those complaints. We had 1 noise complaint as a result of fireworks. And there was also 1 complaint of open fire on the beach, all handled by the department. It should also be noted that the overnight patrols, our 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. patrols, consider Town Way one of our business checks. So throughout the night, our patrols do business checks and check the areas. That is considered a business check. It's checked at least once every night, depending on weather and other issues that might have been. They will check it more than once. I can also tell you there's been no reports to us of littering, vandalism, trespassing, or any other violations or criminal activity that would draw additional attention to the area. So overall, I'll read this from the memo. Overall, I believe there is an ample signage in the area to clearly delineate the no parking areas and the speed limit of the roadway, as well as a signage designating certain roadways as private, Oliver Lane. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly increased the traffic and number of visitors to Little Compton. However, I do not believe any changes to the current parking configuration are necessary on Town Way. The concern of out-of-state plates in the area is not an issue at this time, as all New England as well as New York and New Jersey residents are no longer required to self-quarantine upon arrival to Rhode Island. That was as of the writing, August 28th. I did not check that so-called hot list of states over the 5% mark that the governor has set today. And as well as stated before, I've asked our office to increase their visibility and patrols, specifically during the weekends and favorable weather days, to further assist the residents with any of the concerns that they may have. And that was the summation of the report.
Thank you, Chief. Administrator, any further comments on that?
The chief did a great job summarizing that, and he's certainly a very thorough report and to cover the issues that were raised by the residents.
Thank you. Are there public comments? If you would indicate by raising your hand or using the chat box, we'd be grateful.
I see no raised hands or chat messages.
Thank you.
Motion to place the report on file?
Second.
Yes, the motion is made and seconded to place the report from the Chief of Police on file. Is there further discussion? We'll vote on that motion then. Councilor Anderson.
Aye.
Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
motion aye. Thank you.
Just a point of order, sir.
Yes.
That was the administrator and the chief of police's report. That was the both of them together.
Thank you. Thank you. The next item of business is an update on the status of the municipal resilience program. Once again, we are in a very favorable position, and Councilor Anderson has some good news to advise us with respect to that. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'm just going to check to make sure you're hearing me okay.
We
Are you
are.
hearing
We
me?
can. Yes.
Okay. So you'll recall that back on July 23rd, as part of the municipal resilience program sponsored by the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, we held a workshop consisting of 25 to 30 residents and facilitators. And last week, we received a draft summary of findings for that that was a product of that work. It's about 40 pages long. About half of that is text and tables. The other half is maps. It's a summary of some of the issues identified, some of the action items identified, the prioritizing of those to develop strategies to plan for and mitigate the effects of climate change, storm damage, and so forth. And myself, Town Council President Mushin, and Town Administrator Texiera are the so-called core team for that effort. We have not yet had the opportunity to meet to review the draft of the summary. We chatted very briefly yesterday. We will have a chance to do that shortly. We were asked to get back to the facilitators, Adam Welchel and Sue Anderbar, if we have any concerns about any revisions of that. So we haven't had a chance to do that. Today, I was able to contact Sean O'Rourke, the staff person at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank about the next step in the process. That is, we now have this summary of findings or draft form. And the next step is in the program is to apply for a so-called action grant to implement some kind of infrastructure project that the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank would, we hope, finance in part, and that we would have identified through this process. So I did exchange phone messages and received an email from today asking what the next step would be. And if I may, I'll just read the brief email he provided. Thanks for reaching out about next steps in the process. The timing is perfect. I will be contacting you next week to set up a time for me to meet with the Little Compton core team to discuss priority actions that emerge from the workshop and the process to apply for action grant funding. We will target having this meeting towards the end of September. The action grant RFP request for proposal will be released to 2020 participating municipalities in late October or early November and due back in mid-December. He's attached the sample RFP from the last year, and I anticipate the structure and requirements will be similar. He commented in his phone message, he said, hopefully the process is not a heavy lift. And he said that seemed to be the consensus of past participants. I would just say, looking at the last year's RFP, that the grant range for request was between $50,000 and $250,000. I'll read just the general nature of the eligible projects. Funding is to advance priority climate adaptation projects identified by the municipality to address climate change impacts resulting from extreme weather, sea level rise, inland and coastal flooding, severe heat, and other climate impacts. Projects that propose nature-based solutions or strategies that rely on green infrastructure and enhancement of natural systems to improve community resilience are encouraged. So that's the essence of my report. Given the unpredicted circumstances of this year's events, we've done a good job staying on track, as have the Infrastructure Bank and their facilitating team. And Mr. O'Rourke assures us that we will remain on track. So we'll hear back from him within a week, and it will be up to Bob, Tony, and myself to interact with him and to figure out how we may want to keep involving the previous participants in the workshop in any way in that process. So I would also anticipate that when we get the final draft of this button down of the summary of findings, that we can then make that available to the public as well. That's my opinion, but that's my report.
Thank you. I just would emphasize again that this is a real possibility, not a possibility, a virtual probability that we will receive significant support for that type of project. And it's exactly the kind of thing that the administrator has been working with the capital plan to craft it so that it has ready projects that are on deck to be able to use in this kind of pursuit. So it's great news, and the three of us will commit ourselves to making whatever inputs are needed by the state folks so that we can move this forward rapidly. The next item of business, are there any questions on that? Next item of business is new business, and it's new business because we received this request not in time to make the last agenda. However, we did receive it in time to make the necessary notification of farmers. This is, again, another item which Chapter 20 of our code requires that we notify farmers. In this particular case, the Ag Division of the Department of Environmental Management contacted the police chief after having looked at our ordinances and said, your ordinances forbid shooting on Sundays, and we would ask that you consider allowing the shooting of deer and birds with the express purpose of protecting agriculture on Sundays. And so that would then involve, were we to consider that, amending Town Code Chapter 3-5.6, which currently prohibits that activity on Sunday. So if we could, I'd like to hear some of the public comment we received. Mr. Cabot is among those who wrote to us asking that we consider acting favorably on this.
Yes, thank you again. I think anything that adds a tool to our toolkit is something that I would support. The caveat to that, though, would be who could do the shooting, if it has to be a farmer or if it can be a hunter that is on farmer's land. And in conjunction with that, if it's hunting, that's one thing, the carcass is basically spoken for. But if it's just depredation, where a farmer is shooting a pest, so to speak, then I think the town would have to consider some form of carcass disposal in their amendment of the zoning ordinance. And the reason I bring that up is because I don't want to have us solving a potential problem, but creating a problem with coyotes, for example. We don't need any larger population of coyotes in town than we already have. And if they have a free source of food, that doesn't help that problem at all.
Thank you. Just to be clear, you made reference to its status as a zoning ordinance. Just to be clear, it is not that. It is a part of the rest of the code, so it doesn't have the same constraints or process that a zoning ordinance change would. But nonetheless, your points are all well taken and well made. Thank you. Are there other public comments?
Yes, Mr. Paul, Skip Paul. Oops.
I'd like to just concur with Mr. Cabot, and the deer pressure is mounting. You talk to anybody, Craig Hibbard, me, all of us. I know Ian Walker's had unbelievable damage this year, so I think we need a full court press to protect the farmers' rights to get the deer population down by any means legally possible. So I just want to concur that I think allowing Sunday hunting of deer and birds to be open.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I have a comment if there's no more from the public.
Yes.
I concur with Rusty and Skip. I do share Rusty's concern. I think Skip does too, about the removal of the carcass. If it's I mean, if you're taking down a deer and you're taking it and eating it, that's fine, but you've got to have a means to get rid of it. My problem here is deer and coyotes. Coyotes, for some odd reason, they don't care if it's Sunday or not when they come and take out chickens. So I concur with it, but the last thing you want to do is shoot something and let it lay dead on the ground, and then that creates a whole nother problem. Especially a deer, then the coyote problem gets worse. So I concur with this. My initial thought was maybe add a section, if we do this, add a section to 356 that specifically talks to farmers and, pest eradication or something to that regards. Instead of trying to modify what we have, just add another subsection that talks about farmers. You can make it registered farmers or their designated hunter that they want to do this with.
Yes, sir. Are there other comments from the council?
Yeah, one thing that wasn't mentioned, and that was in Rusty's letter, was about a possible side effect is the reduction of the noise of crop cannons. Do you see this? Do you see there being less of a need for crop cannons if you are able to take out the pests on Sunday? Because I do hear comments from people thinking that there is shooting going on Sundays, but they have to be corrected that it's actually crop cannons and not shooting. And are the crop cannons louder than a gun? I don't really know how loud they are compared to a rifle or something like that.
So Andrew, I don't know if that was directed at me. This is Rusty speaking. I would defer to some of the other farmers in town to answer whether or not it would replace crop cannons on Sunday. My feel, though, is that it probably would not, because you're adding manpower to a problem that they've solved with technology. I think it would help other people who don't have the crop cannons solve a problem they have with pests. And I haven't done an exact study, but my feel is that the noise would probably be similar. It just wouldn't be on a repetitive schedule, which you sometimes have with the crop cannons, even though they can be timed to not be every 15 minutes, for example. There'll be a pattern nonetheless, which you wouldn't have with hunting or shooting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Skip Ball has his hand up, and as does one other.
Go ahead, Skip.
I was to speak to the subject of the crop cannons. Crop cannons are primarily to scare away birds out of large blocks of sweet corn. You don't put a crop cannon around tomatoes to try to keep the deer away. The birds can fly around across great acreages in such fast fashion that the crop cannons are really just for bird control, not for deer, as far as I can tell. I think another point would be to maybe, if you're going to add anything, make sure that the hunters are well trained. You don't want some yahoos out there talk about problems with dead carcasses not being left. I think it's most farmers have realized by this time that hiring professional hunters is the way to go. That's all I have to say.
Thanks. Yes, sir, or ma'am, the other commenter.
Yeah, hi, my name's Randy Hathaway.
Yes,
Just, I wanted to bring something. I didn't know, I got a couple of calls from hunters this afternoon talking to me, concerned about what this is all about. And I don't know if this was about, opening up the town to Sunday hunting, or if it's just about a guy that has a problem and can shoot a deer on a Sunday. If you're opening up the town to Sunday hunting, it's a whole new, whole different ball game. If you start hunting on Saturdays and Sundays, you're going to have people coming here from out of town that don't know the town, Dartmouth, Westport, people from Massachusetts, because it's just it's 10, 15 minutes away. We've had it like this for many, many years. You can hunt on 6 days a week, but not 7. When you bring in people from other towns, they're unfamiliar with the surroundings. They may get permission from somebody that has a house, but they don't know where the other houses are. I believe if you're starting to hunt on Sundays, you're going to have more problems. I think we've been very good with this over the past years, but you're going to have more problems with, landowner relations if you start hunting Saturdays and Sundays. For people that are familiar with the deer season know right now that it goes from October 1st to January 31st. I did some quick calculations. That's about 17 weeks. That's 17 days during that. If you don't hunt on Sundays, you can't hunt. So I think you can hunt 50 days a year. And I just don't, we have good hunting in town. We have surrounding towns, Portsmouth, Middletown, Tiverton, that have lost hunting rights and gotten worse from some of this. And they've lost sections of their town that they can't hunt in anymore. So if we're talking about opening up the town to Sunday hunting versus a farmer that needs to shoot a deer because he's eaten some of his corn, 2 totally different things. And that's just, I don't want to see losing, trying to solve a problem, losing some of our hunting rights in Little Compton.
thank you. That's an important distinction, I think. Here's a proposal. Suppose we asked the police chief, whose ordinance it's in the police ordinances, the police chief, the administrator, and Councilor Golembeski, if you would be willing to look at this and come back to the council with a proposal that tries to walk this line that we've heard described tonight between somewhere between where we are now and wide open Sunday hunting. Rather something narrower than that, and bring it forward for our consideration. Does that seem like something that would be helpful to us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously DEM's asking for it as well. It's not something that we created locally, so.
Right. We're responding, but obviously our response can be no thanks. And it doesn't sound like that's where the farmers are, but it also, to Mr. Hathaway's point, it's easy to step over the line and the unintended consequences get you, so.
Yeah, I mean, my intent is if we do this, it's very, very specific to a certain group for farmers. It's not an open season for hunting on Sundays.
And may I comment on that?
Yes,
I think the intent should be pretty clear as well, for the purpose of pest elimination and not so much just for hunting. So.
So I would entertain a motion to task the Councilor Golembeski, the administrator, the solicitor, and I'm sorry, I've lost my 4th candidate there.
Chief of Police.
Chief of Police, thank you.
Chief, please.
That those 4 would caucus and bring back to us a proposal on how we might amend or not, depending on their deliberations, but a proposal on how we might amend the section of the code that addresses this 3-5.6.
Is that a motion, Bob?
That I would entertain that motion if you would make it, sir.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski. Is there further discussion? All right, we'll vote then. Counselor Anderson,
Aye.
Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
motion aye. Thank you. Good discussion and look forward to hearing more on that. All right, the next item of business is also new business. It's a request from the Congregational Church to use Town Landing on September 12th. That would be Saturday for an evening service. Social distancing and COVID protocols would be invoked. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
The motion is made by Counselor Golembeski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mataronis. Is there further discussion? All right, we'll call for a roll call vote. Counselor Anderson,
I vote aye.
Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
motion aye. Thank you. Next item of business is communications. A copy of a public notice of the zoning board sent to the town as an abutter of a property at Plat 33 lots 5 and 6. It appears that the reason that we are being notified is that we are the owner of a small cemetery. I would propose to you that we have no issue with that and that we have no response for the request for variance.
So moved. I don't think the gravestones will mind.
Motion to place on file.
The motion then has been made by Golembeski, seconded by Mataronis to place this matter on file. Is there further discussion? Voting then, Counselor Anderson,
Aye.
Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
motion aye. Thank you. The next item is the abatement list received from the tax assessor.
I didn't have a chance to talk to the tax assessor today, but the abatement deals with less funds, and there was a revaluation of the two houses. So actually, we ended up with a little more than $4,000 increase when the houses were revalued. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the abatement.
I'll second it.
Motion is made by Mataronis and seconded by Golembeski to approve the request of the assessor. Is there further discussion? Calling for a vote then, Counselor Anderson,
Aye.
Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
motion aye. Thank you. The next item is the consent calendar.
Motion to place a consent calendar on file unless anybody wants to pull anything for discussion.
I'll second that.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Counselor Anderson,
Aye.
Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
motion aye. Next, the payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second.
The motion is made by Golembeski, second by Mataronis to pay bills. Are there any discussion? Call for a vote. Counselor Anderson,
Aye.
Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Counselor Mataronis,
Aye.
Counselor Moore,
Aye.
motion aye. There being no further business before the council, will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. You're welcome.